Ahora voy a hacer interés continuo en los días.
ことがあるんですよ。
レフで確認していただいていいですか？確かに。
Viewers. It's okay. See that movie?
Getting at the end of their day. And it was not what I got out. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back for day 2. Before we start with the agenda item, Peter Pesersons would like to make a few remarks about the report.
Okay. Well, first, I think we want to thank yesterday's hosts of the wonderful reception on the 41st floor of the tall building. I saw a few people getting a bit queasy when they looked out of the window. So Toru and colleagues, where is Toru? in the back. Thank you. Well, secondly, Florence the Scarf still hasn't found her owner. And apparently now there is Twinkie the Lapel, who is also looking for its owner. What? The owner is found? Okay. Okay, on to more serious matters. So we sent out the summary report part 1 this morning. I hope you could all download it from the Dropbox link I sent to you. If you could not, then just send me an email, and during the course of the day we will send you a copy. Just to make sure that you do not go through the report and you're surprised that certain things you can't remember they were discussed. As on the first page of the report, it says the items that were not yet discussed. So ignore those for the time being. Hopefully we'll get through those today. Also, of course, 372, which is Odin Westweg Park. We may have to come back to that briefly in the afternoon in case there is anything special that we need to take into account. And then for 5.3, we still have to, the IODE-XXV, we still will have to look at the draft recommendation that was proposed yesterday and that Wast and Hernan have been drafting. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Peter. So for details I won't go into, we're going to start this morning with agenda item 4, which is capacity development. And I will be turning this item over to, contributions of IODE toward implementation of the IOC capacity development strategy. The first item we'll discuss is 4.1.1, IODE Ocean Teacher Global Academy Project. And for that, I would like to turn the microphone over to Claudia Delgado, please.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm reporting on the activities developed under the Ocean Teacher Global Academy during the past 2 years. We had one steering group meeting that took place last year in May in Brussels after the first Oceans meeting. This meeting focused a lot on the adaptations needed after we obtained the ISO certification as a learning services provider, and how we could use the Moodle platform to implement some of the adaptations needed. During this intersessional period, 6 of the regional training centers obtained a designated status given the positive performance, and these were Colombia, India, Kenya, Malaysia, Mozambique, and Senegal, while 2 others kept the candidate status, these being China and Iran. During this period, we've organized 30 strictly ocean teacher training courses around the network of RTCs, which included 733 participants. Additionally, another 15 training courses or activities were supported by Ocean Teacher, involving no less than 500 participants. These include training activities jointly organized, namely with IOC Harmful Algal Bloom, MPR IOC, POGO, Sea Data Cloud, MBON, Ghent University, and UN Doalos, amongst others. This support consists mainly on hosting the contents of the training courses on the Ocean Teacher e-learning platform. And this support is done without any extra financial support, except in the case of Sea Data Cloud. During this period, 20 new training courses were uploaded on the platform in 4 different languages. As we've mentioned, the certification was obtained in April 2018. And regarding human resources, Mr. Greg Reed is hired as a consultant for specifically for developing training contents and also supervising the quality management system for Ocean Teacher. Ms. Sophie de Bans is also hired as an administrative officer under Ocean Teacher for Ocean Teacher since September 2017 and provides administrative and logistics support to all training activities, not only at the IOD project office, but also for the network of regional training centers. Our former colleague Adi Kakotkar left the project office in June 2018. I would like to remind you that the Ocean Teacher Global Academy is a project funded by FUST, and this will end in December this year, 2019. We've been informed that a new FUST program phase will be discussed during this year. Finally, the project was externally reviewed during 2018. The outcome was very positive, although there were a few remarks regarding a follow-up project. Namely, this should be more KPI oriented and should serve all IOC training needs, and there's need to change the business model that we have right now. A new project proposal is now being drafted by the OTGA Secretariat. For now. So I would like to ask the committee to comment on the progress achieved and provide advice on the way forward.
Are there comments on this, please? I'll give Peter, is that all you want to write on that? Yeah. Okay. Moving on to item 4.1.2, IOC Group of Experts on Capacity Development. So for this, we have Ariel Twassi, please, to introduce this item. Thank you, Ariel. Did I?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
For 111? Yes. I messed up. Sorry, my bad. I was just checking that you were going to be here. It was a test. So item 4.1.1.
Just did 411. You have to go down. You seem to miss that. Go down. No, don't click on these side links. Go down.
The outline doesn't work?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.1.1.1, IODE Ocean Teacher Global Academy Phase 2. Is that right? Did I get that right? Thanks. Thank you. Claudia, please.
Thank you. Okay, so following on the previous agenda item, I will be introducing what we have in mind for the follow-up of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy. So as I described, the Ocean Teacher became a truly global academy during the last few years, thanks to its regional training centers. Despite its overall success, namely confirmed by the external evaluation performed by FUST, a few issues have been identified, namely that the RTCs have very different capacity in terms of administrative as well as teaching staff, securing teaching staff for a smooth organization of the courses. The OTGA Secretariat is still taking over many of the tasks expected from the RTCs. A limited number of new courses and topics has been developed by the regional training centers as opposed to what was expected. Some RTCs depend entirely on OTGA funds to organize the courses, while other RTCs cannot manage external funds, thus relying on the Ocean Teacher Secretariat and IODE Project Office to organize many aspects of the course logistics. There is still a very slow uptake of the use of the Ocean Teacher e-learning platform by the RTCs and also by the other IOC programs. As I've already mentioned, the government of Flanders has informed us very recently of its decision to renew FUST. The new FUST agreement should take place during the first semester of this year, and this should allow the submission of new project proposals during the second semester of 2019. However, some aspects will need to be reinforced in new project proposals, namely projects should clearly demonstrate co-funding by other parties, either in actual funds or in-kind contribution. Projects should allow clear opportunities for full valorization of their results, including also where this is based on the cooperation of Flemish partners. The new first phase will prioritize smaller projects over the course of the 5 years first agreement, as opposed to previous phases where a few large-scale projects were funded. And projects should focus on the potential for application of the products and services developed, namely to the private sector. Thus, given the above and building on the achievements and lessons learned from the OTGA project, we are going to submit a proposal by the end of this year. As what we have in mind is to draft a project proposal with a few changes, namely a change in the business model. As opposed to the previous Ocean Teacher and TA projects, the new OTGA will focus on developing packaged courses that can be delivered on demand. For this, the project will hire international experts in the different topics, which will be in charge of developing the training, the specific training courses. The course contents developed will be uploaded by the Ocean Teacher on the Ocean Teacher e-learning platform by the OTGA Secretariat. The courses will be delivered either fully online, blended learning, or face-to-face, depending on the suitability of the topics and the demand. The different Ocean Teacher regional training centers will host the classroom phase of the courses, depending on the target region, training topic, as well as relevant language for the training. Regarding fellowships, there will be budget assigned to support the attendance of classroom courses, although in a limited number. The selection process for the fellowships will often depend on performance during an online phase of the course, thus prior to the classroom phase. Co-funding by the course participant and his or her institute will be further promoted. The course portfolio to be developed will consider and integrate any training needs relevant to the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and its 17 SDGs, with special attention to SDG 14, as well as the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. We would like to have comments from the committee.
Thank you. Francisco, you see.
Thank you, Cynthia. Just to point out the positive results that we have achieved in some of the OTGAs due to the coordination between other activities within IOC, which has helped to improve and advance in the regions by using the most of the different projects. It's a cross-cutting activity which has helped to move forward in the activities in information.
Thank you, Columbia. So I take it from that comment that you support the Phase 2 proposed project?
Of course.
Yes. Any other comments? Yes, Japan?
Thank you, Chair. We also we hope a new proposal will be accepted in a new FU trust fund scheme. My concern, it's important to collaborate with IOC program and to support their activities, but my concern is workload on secretary. If we have more cooperate with other IOC project and regional training course, probably secretary works become more heavy. So it's we need to think about such a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Seeing no more comments, I'll just add, Claudia, congratulations on securing the renewed funding from the Government of Flanders, King of Belgium. That's quite an accomplishment. And so, Peter, you've almost captured that? Seeing no more comments, we'll move on to item, not quite yet. Yes, Invamar, yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, congratulations from Claudia. It's a high work, and she supports us in all the activities at RTCs. And of course, we highly recommend to prioritize some courses with the subcommissions, for example, in our region, Latin American, with the IO-Caribbean. And also, we support this new phase of the project, and also we have another courses that we can put on our, we can offer into this new phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Invamar. And we thank you for the very good work that you're doing at your regional training center. Okay. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4.1.2, IOC Group of Experts on Capacity Development. Ariel Toisi, please.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So with regards to this group of experts on capacity development, as it was mentioned during the conference back in 2015, IOC adopted a capacity development strategy for the period 2015-2021. And that strategy identifies 6 outputs that all need to be addressed on a long-term and sustained basis. Furthermore, that assembly, IOC Assembly, agreed that the IOC global and regional programs need to develop programmatic and regionally relevant capacity development work plans. Based on this strategy and related needs assessments conducted in a consistent manner, building on ongoing activities and making use of existing training and education facilities. By 2017, the Assembly, the 29th IOC Assembly, decided to establish an IOC group of experts on capacity development with several tasks, namely assist global and regional programs with implementation of capacity development needs assessments in a consistent manner, assist global and regional programs with the development of programmatic and regionally relevant capacity development work plans based on the capacity development strategy, assist with the mobilization of financial and in-kind resources, provide advice to global and regional programs on relevant methods and tools to improve the quality and impact of the capacity development efforts, and advise the Assembly on and start implementation of transfer of marine technology clearinghouse mechanism. So this group of experts had a first face-to-face meeting March last year, 2018, and one of the points that was raised was that the gap analysis that it was conducted within IOC with regards to the strategy activities was looking into the implementation plan was made at the global and regional levels, but we were not sure, the group of experts was not sure about having captured the needs and requirements of individual member states, certain groups of member states, in particular small island developing states and least developed countries, or those member states who are currently not part of a regionally subsidiary body within IOC. So that led to the creation of one intersessional task team to look into the capacity, the development needs and requirements from individual member states with a particular focus on those that I have just mentioned. And there was a second task team, intersessional task team created to look into the possible development of a clearinghouse mechanism. So these two groups, actually, these two task teams, since many of the activities were interrelated, developed a survey. The survey was circulated to all IOC member states, and we received in the order of 40-odd responses. The initial analysis of those responses seems to be unconclusive in terms that giving the member states the possibility to identify top 5 priorities in terms of capacity development out of probably 15 or 17 categories, then there was no one clearly identified as the top priority or the top 5 priorities. But that is the initial assessment. We have been discussing with part of the IODE Secretariat the possibility of going back to those responses and see if we can identify any trend. Instead of looking at the whole set of responses, look at individual regions or groups of member states and see if we can identify any particular trend or need to prioritize the efforts. In any case, what's important for the group of experts and on capacity development is to receive from global programs, and in this case from this community IOD, which are the needs and requirements that have to be included in the implementation plan, despite the fact that IOD has already contributed to the gap analysis, as I said, back in 2017. So the action for this committee, it's actually to provide, the committee is invited to provide advice to the IOC group of experts on capacity development with regards to related IODE capacity development requirements with a view to its proper inclusion in the IOC implementation plan. Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Ariel. I open the floor to comments. This is important feedback that Ariel needs to take back to these task teams. Yes, Nadia, please.
Yes, thank you. It may be of help to look at the JCOM external stakeholder survey that was carried out last year, and the document is available at the JCOM web portal. I can provide the precise address. Here we see a high priority in access to data services and standards and best practices by the external stakeholders in the capacity building. Access to data services means not only observational data services, but also model data services, which means forecasting, and standards and best practices as two of the key needs in the capacity development. This is the JCOM survey. It's clearly not the same, but it may be of help to look at that results too.
Thank you for that comment. Could you please send that URL for the report to Peter, please? Thank you. All right, seeing no other comments, thank you, Ariel, for that comprehensive report. Yeah, Peter is saying this really is an important issue. So I find it hard to believe that no one else in this room has issues that they would like to raise, feedback that Ariel can take back to the committee. Any clarification on the priority items from other regions similar to the issues that Nadia just brought from the JCOM community? Underserved areas, small island developing nations. Invamar, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as I showed in the scientific conference, we are developing the prototype of CHM, including the information of Latin American and the Caribbean. And if you have any of the member states, any recommendation, we are open to receive opinions in order to work in this prototype, and also for the use of all of other areas that can use the demo when we finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Invamar.
Just making it up, people don't have to say it.
So you have feedback from the Secretariat. So when people read the words that are on the screen, let us know if you're happy with the way this has been captured, or we need to make some modifications or preferably additions. Argentina, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. And I was looking at this text, and may I suggest that we not only consider the possibility of expanding the CHM, the clearinghouse mechanism, to other regions, but probably to other topics. So it's not just for regional subsidiary bodies. I would believe that we would think of this mechanism that could be used by other IOC programs, or to address specific topics that are not necessarily within one region.
As well as with other partners, is that clear enough?
Yep, but it wouldn't be other partners in the region, it would be other partners.
From other IOC programs.
Could be for any subject or topic. As you know, IOC is really engaged in the process within the UN discussing the legal instrument for biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction that will correspond to no particular region. The CHM would be very useful, and this way, if modifying this text, we're capturing those ideas to not just the regional programs.
Like so? Yeah. Yes, Thailand, please.
Thank you very much, Cindy. As I am working in this region, I would like to inform that in the Westpac region, we have our models on the capacity building to respond to the need of the IOC. We call the regional training and research centers. It's a bit different from a regional training center because we try to tie those training with the program and project of the IOC and the regional levels. Right now, we have 2 regional training and research centers. One is located in Qingdao in China on the ocean dynamic and climate. And the second one located in the Indonesia, we call the marine biodiversity capacity buildings. And also we are going to activate 3 more this year. One will be located in the East Normal University in China on the plastic DB and microplastic research and monitoring. And the second one in the Philippines will be subject on the coral reef management. And the third one will be in Vietnam on marine biotoxin related to the food security as well. That we hope that in our 5 regional training research center we operate by the end of this year. We are not only support in this region. For some of those RTRC, we also support other regions as well. For example, regional training and research center in the Qingdao or ocean dynamic and climate that we are served at the JCOM. We are working on the ocean modeling, ocean forecasting system. We also provide the capacity building to the South Americas, to the African and the Middle East, and in the northern part of Indian Ocean as well.
Very good, Thailand. Could I ask you to send? Yes, but I still would like that text in the report.
It has to go in another section.
Could I ask you to send that text to Peter, please? And he's saying that he doesn't think this belongs in this agenda item, but perhaps we could figure out a place to capture that. Thank you. Colombia, please. Yes, Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think that we still have to look at the results of the document, and that will also give us good information. But I would add also that this activity can be actually help in the development of the plans that we are now constructing for the decade. I believe this is going to be very important since we'll get a diagnosis on the needs of information, the connection with other items, not only in ocean sciences, but also maybe to social sciences, something that was mentioned yesterday when Julian presented his report on the preparations of the decade. So I believe that that's something that we can actually make good use of the results of the activity. And thank you, Ariel, for the information.
Yes, very important point, Colombia. Thank you. Okay, I think that's all we're going to have on that topic. Ariel, thank you very much for reporting that back to the committee. Okay. We're going to move.
What do we have already done?
Yeah. Trying to remember where I wrote those things down. So we're going to skip ahead now in the agenda down through item 5, the future of IOD. We've already done the IODE management issues, so we can skip to agenda item 5.2, IOC Ocean Data and Information System, ODIS. We had originally planned to have Tobias Spears of Canada present this item, but the internet connectivity in the room is not up to that task. I'm still hoping we can figure out a way to bring him in for audio.
He's not online yet.
Okay, he is, well, he's not listening in. Do we have the streaming going? Or we don't have anything. Do we have a way for him to listen in? Yeah, he said he would be online.
It's not online.
You don't see him.
How do you want to postpone this the latest? What would be the next one?
Well, there's several of them in a row on OTIS. So we need to do those together. We've done 5.3. We could skip to 5.4. IOC strategic plan. I like that idea. I mean, I would like Tobias to be at least part of this discussion and be able to contribute any of the technical information that's needed. Greg, would you be prepared to present item 5.4 now, the IOC strategic plan? Meanwhile, Arno or Peter, could I ask you to see if you can reach Tobias by email or Skype and ask him if he's having trouble with connectivity on his end? It's 8:30 in the evening his time, but I checked in with him this morning and he said he would be trying to listen into the meeting through the whole thing. I asked him if it was okay if we postponed OTIS to allow capacity development to go first, so I know he was planning on listening in. Okay, so let's try skipping ahead to agenda item 5.4, IOC Strategic Plan for Data and Information Management. And for this, Greg Reed will be presenting this topic. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. So I just want to mention here about the IOC Strategic Plan for Data and Information Management. We currently have a strategic plan, which we wrote back in 2017. It's usually a 4-year plan, and the current strategic plan concludes in 2021. So we need to start to prepare to revise that strategic plan, and it needs to be ready to be submitted to the Assembly in June of 2021. So we've still got 2 years, but we need to start working on that revision of that strategic plan now. The plan would be then to have that submitted to the next IODE session for approval and then submitted to the Assembly in June of 2021. So what I'm proposing is we establish an intersessional working group that will look at that strategic plan and update that strategic plan. And we're looking for volunteers who will be part of that intersessional working group. We also have a draft decision here which we need to adopt.
I don't think you need to read through it, but Peter, if you could slowly scroll through the draft decision for the intersessional working group, no? Yes? Thank you. So we'll be asking for comments on this draft decision, which, according to the procedures, we'll be talking about adopting tomorrow morning, at which time we'll be asking for volunteers for this intersessional working group. This is important timing because, as you see, because of the years, this will coincide with the beginning of the UN Ocean Decade for Ocean Sciences. Of ocean sciences. A somewhat enthusiastic contribution from Argentina.
Can the technical people connect the sound? Okay.
Okay. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
No.
So we go back to 5.1.
I'm going to continue with the JCOM data management strategy, and then we'll go back. Oh, so we'll finish up this little section.
What is there?
Yes, sir. It's ready? Tobias, can you say something? Sure. Can you hear me?
Is that okay?
Yes.
I just feel like it's really...
Perfect.
Okay, seeing no comments on this very important effort of ours to update the strategic plan, we'll go back, and I apologize for the fragmentation of the agenda. Argentina, yes? No? Yes? Yes. All right, now we're gonna skip around because we're going back now. So Argentina, please, comments on the IOC and the decision?
It's very short a comment, and might seem editorial, but if you look at the terms of reference of this intersessional group we're creating, I would feel more comfortable if the reference, the text is between brackets, the 2020 the years, instead of in the second line goes to the fourth line after strategic. Let's go to the decision. Further down, further down, further down. Yeah, further down to the terms of reference, further down. Continue, please. Okay, there. Second line. So the group will review and update. And it seems that we already have, what I read there is that we already have a strategic plan for that period, and they will be reviewing and updating it. But if we move that text to the fourth line, then what we are asking the group is to look into the next period, not the current one. So we are updating this. That was my whole comment in the terms of reference. That, okay. I presented performance submit. The revised version of the strategic plan. Okay. Now it makes more sense. Either there or 2026 could be to the fourth line instead of the revised version. We'll formally submit the 2022-2026 strategic plan. So for someone who's not here, in the future, they will understand what we meant. And that was all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I understand, thank you. That does make it more clear.
Cindy, are you still looking for volunteers?
Well, absolutely. This will be a very important effort, but we don't actually expect all the flags to go up until tomorrow morning when we adopt. So if it turns out we don't adopt the decision, we won't need volunteers. So, apparently I'm wrong about this as well. For this one, we're actually calling for volunteers right now. USA, thank you. United Kingdom, thank you.
Well, yeah, I have the pleasure of volunteering somebody that's absent. Yes.
Oh, well done. Well done. Very advanced volunteering effort. Thank you very much.
She wants to contribute.
Very good, United Kingdom. Thank you.
People or country or both?
I think you should put countries because in this case, we're going with the advanced volunteering effort of volunteering someone who's not in the room. Italy, thank you.
The Netherlands?
Netherlands, thank you.
That's it. Rest tomorrow.
And so there will be opportunities tomorrow for those of you who didn't get your flags up fast enough today to volunteer for this committee. This is going to be very important work. We do refer to these strategic plans as we plan the specific activities going forward. And because of the timing with the decade, this will be an important effort. And it's not an overwhelming task because you already have a very well-written strategic plan to work from. So it's updating, reviewing, and updating that for keeping the new activities in mind, especially the UN decade. Yes, United Kingdom.
And this strategic plan will need to...
Use microphone, please.
I presume that this strategic plan needs to coordinate with the action on data activities for the UN Decade Ocean that Anand is writing up as well. So coordination between two actions.
Yes, yes. And across IOC too, to be clear. So this is not specific to IODE, this is the IOC, yeah. 5.2 now, all right. Okay, that concludes that item, and so we will skip, can't read this, skip back up to item 5.2, IOC Ocean Data and Information System, ODIS. Tobias Spears, can you hear me? Yeah, this is. Yes, I can. Okay, so there's a bit of a delay, so we'll keep that in mind. All right, Tobias, I'll keep that in mind as we go through and discuss this. Okay, so this is Ocean Data 5.2, Ocean Data, and there are several sections that are related to this that we'll go through in order for a change in the action paper. The concept was first presented at IODE-XXV, and to remind people, this activity started in response to the IOC audit. We wrote the concept paper, presented that, it was accepted at the assembly. It included a history of how we got to this point, justification for doing the work, that was what was described in the concept paper, a couple of suggestions for how to proceed. We did form an intersessional working group that considered several options. As I said, we were severely limited with resourcing, having none. There were additional challenges with staff changes at the project office. But in the end, the things settled out. We've had very good support from the project office, from Arno, Peter, and then also Jess Francisco Hernandez also was really critical in setting up the what we're looking at now as the prototype portal. Let's see. Okay, so the action for this item, the action for this item is to approve the concept paper that is available in the documents that you've all been looking at before this meeting. Before I open the floor for comments, I'll ask Tobias, would you like to add anything before I open the floor for comments from the committee?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, unfortunately the audio quality is really poor, but I think you said that was fine for this point, and then when we have comments from the floor, maybe you can contribute again. So at this point, I'll open for comments from the floor related to this action item of approving the concept paper, which will be, then the updated version will be presented for the next IOC assembly in June, July, this summer, 2019. So can I assume from the lack of comments that we are approving the concept paper? Italy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to acknowledge the work done up to now for the development of all this. And but in the same time, I would like to ask to extend or how to extend the working group, and the working group involved in the development, in the updating, and in the definition of the strategic view. I know that there has been an involvement of ITD-MP, but I think that given the importance of this result, the activity should be, I don't know how, but should find a way to involve a wider community of experts.
I think so, yeah. So,
Draft decision 523.
right. So, Alessandra, I think what you're saying is thank you for the work done so far, and that you think the work should continue. There is a proposal in 5.2.3 proposing to continue on the work done so far and take it into the next phase, to establish an intersessional working group to develop the implementation plan and cost-benefit analysis of the IOC ocean data and information system. So we'll be discussing that in 10 or 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, let me also add to this that it's a process. The first step was the concept paper. Another step is the IODE's catalog. Another step is this intersessional working group to develop the implementation plan and cost-benefit analysis, which was requested by the auditors. And then at some point, possibly IODE's will need to become a project or multiple projects. Yeah. So I understand very well what you said. I mean, there has to be further consultation with a wide variety of stakeholders. Yeah, but I think that's part of the process now. But the first step was we need to go to the assembly.
Agreed.
Tobias wants to say something?
I think he was just agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah, everything you said is correct, Peter. So that engagement, that strategic plan development, those would be activities as part of the IODE's work plan.
Okay, Alessandra, does that satisfy your question or remark?
Yes, partially. Yes, even I think in the development of this catalog of sources, now these sources needs to be really reviewed by the community and to fine-tune the result to go to the further step. I understand that it's a stepwise approach, but we still need an assessment from the community, I think.
Yep, and that was the thinking by having the live demo available here during the week. My hope was that at this point for this agenda item, we could get agreement that the committee approves the concept paper in its current form, which includes some history from the previous version of the concept paper, but also updates for the work done so far, which describes the which is a metadata catalog. We started with the metadata level, not doing the data exchange service layers. Peter?
In this regard, we are accepting and we are fully supporting the decision.
Thank you, Italy.
Alessandra, let me add to you also under the next.
Which recognize the value of IODE's as a new activity of IODE, IOC, and supported the work together with IODE of JCOM teams to elaborate a complete plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Thank you, Nadia. That is important to add to the final version of the action paper. Could I ask you to send that text? Can be pretty much just what you just said. And if you could include a link to that JCOM 5 report, we can include that in the action paper.
Yeah, the JCOM 5 report is the final report of the JCOM 5, not assembly, but session.
Does it include the work on that you were just describing?
Yeah, I'm reading out of it. So I will talk to Peter on how to specify.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe.
Okay.
You can just send me the text.
Yeah, Peter says if you can just send him the text, he can take it from there. Thank you very much. Yep. Very good. Thank you for your attention. So moving on, where am I? To agenda item 5.2.1, Ocean Data Sources Inventory Pilot Service. So this agenda item is talking specifically about the work that was done by the Intersessional Working Group on OTIS that was formed out of IODE-XXV. We had a face-to-face meeting in March 2018. And we had members of the Intersessional Working Group, but we had a couple of additional technical topic experts that were able to attend that meeting in person as well, and a few people that participated remotely, including Roger Proctor from Australia. So it was something like midnight his time, I think. And Patrick Orange, I think you were also at that meeting, helping us contribute the EMONnet experience. So it was a very productive meeting. Out of that came the idea for what the metadata scheme would be supporting this, recognizing, and that was where we recognized that we could go for option 2 of the 3 potential options. If you recall, that was the medium level effort, and focusing on preparing what became a metadata catalog, essentially a catalog of metadata records representing. We tried to get a good cross-representation of the types of, so it's not comprehensive, it doesn't include everything, but we wanted to get representative items in there in the metadata catalog that would represent the vast range of types of sources of data and information that we would ultimately need to populate the OTIS system with. So we had really excellent contributions from ETDMP, so we could broaden, in addition to the people on the Intersessional Working Group, the timing was such that we had contributions from members of the ETDMP as well. And then that's the system that's being done in the live demo that's been done during this week, including during the scientific conference. So I'll skip ahead to the action items. So now I'm inviting the committee to, first of all, comment on that Ocean Data Sources Inventory Pilot Service, the one that's been demoed. Thank you, Arno, for that effort in the poster room this week. There is still an opportunity to update your own record. You could go into the demo and do it there, or just look at it online. And if you log into Ocean Expert, you can update your information. And then finally, we'll get agreement that this service, as it is a reasonable first step toward what will ultimately become OTIS. So given that, I'll just say, I think I've said this several times this week, given that we don't have a needs assessment done yet, we haven't talked to other areas of IOC comprehensively. We have reached out to several groups. This is the first step toward what will ultimately become OTIS. And as Peter says, we recognize, I think we have already recognized there'll probably be the need for at least 3 different groups working on this at different levels as we go forward. So I open the floor for comments, please. USA, thank you.
I was wondering whether it would be useful to think about what are the requirements of this so that we can build the audits that we all want.
Yep, so when you say this, I assume you mean OTIS. Yeah. So I would expect that would potentially be the step. I think we're ready to do that level for the intersessional working group that will be proposed, I think. Is it in this recommendation? No, the next one, the next item. So if you look ahead in the agenda, you'll see 5.2.3. Would be that next level. I think at that point, so at this point, we, even without a full IOC-wide needs assessment, we know that we will need recommendation of the next one, the next item. So if you look ahead in the agenda, you'll see 5.2.3 would be that next level. I think at that point, so at this point, even without a full IOC-wide needs assessment, we know that we will need recommendation of it. Well, that sounds ridiculous when I say it that way.
Sorry, Tobias, but you were sounding like Mickey Mouse there. Seems to be a problem with Skype. If the voice got totally changed. If you send us a chat through Skype, then I can read it. But
no, I think that was my voice.
What?
I think that was my voice.
Oh, okay.
On delay.
Yeah, there seems to be a long delay. But
it's even more ridiculous than what you thought.
But I think we need to distinguish here between, coming back to Hernan's comment, between ODIS as the bigger initiative and the ODIS catalog of sources. And Hernan, was your comment on the catalog or was it on ODIS?
It seems to me that they are so related to one another that it's kind of hard to distinguish what.
Okay, because all this catalog of sources, and we've said it many times, it is just to try and find out what is out there in all our 149 member states in terms of a variety of content types. The catalog now describes 16 types of knowledge of content, and we're just trying to identify what is available in each country, what is being made available online in each country. Yeah, that's just an inventory. Now, of course, this is now an inventory from, let's say, from our IOC perspective, ocean. If we look a bit further to the decade, then of course that may change. And the question is, of course, now with the decade, what will be the goals, the concrete goals, the objectives of the decade? That is still being discussed by this special planning group. So we're a little bit still in the dark in that regard. But it may well be that there is a need for an expansion of the scope of this catalog to go beyond. There may be 20 UN partners, such as FAO, IHO, UN Environment, and surely their member states also have a lot of content online. So we may need to expand the scope of that. Yeah, and so I think under this agenda item we're trying to establish the ODIS-CAT as a project, and because that gives us let's say a more persistent ability to respond to emerging needs coming from the decade, for example. But I totally agree. The question is, what is it that is needed? But we're now, like I said, a bit in a gray area because the decade planning is still taking place. Does that answer your question?
Partially, yes. I was just trying to have a vision for the future. For example, obviously I'm speculating because we need to capture the requirements in a more sound way. But for example, I will be interested in what the sources of the data are, but also
in what format they're available, if they are publicly available for use, and so on and so forth. There are a number of requirements that once this thing is built, to go back sometimes is more difficult. So I was trying to anticipate some of the requirements up front. So we built towards what we want.
Yeah, so it was what I was starting to say before I was so rudely interrupted by myself. It's a new one. That when we started this, even though we didn't have the broad IOC needs assessment, we realized we could at least take a shot at understanding what the minimum metadata requirements would be. And in fact, I would say we went a little farther than we expected to, getting all the way into a proposed metadata schema, which is, you've seen in that the updated version of the concept paper, down to a list of the formats and vocabularies, content standards that are available now. And then when we solicited sources, so we did an automatic harvesting from the data centers that are already part of the IODE network, keeping in mind that this has to be IOC-wide eventually, but we started with the IODE network of NODCs and ADUs. In addition to putting in their URL for the source of information, we also have been asking for exactly what you were just saying. What format are your data available in? Are they publicly available? So we already have that kind of information to work from, because we recognize as soon as we started thinking about, of course, the next steps in this, that would be the next thing we would need to know. So we gathered that information at the same time. Is that?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think Sissy. Yeah, Sissy.
I have a question concerning the content of the catalog. For example, I see here there is a category information on experts and organizations. For example, we are all registered in the Ocean Expert, in the IOD Ocean Expert catalog. Do we have to enter our details again here, or the system ODIS can retrieve the information from the Ocean Expert inventory? And the same question is valid for the other categories. For example, a lot of members have imported their metadata and data in other systems. Could ODIS retrieve this information directly from these systems?
Thank you for that question. So when you look at the schematic that's in the concept paper, it shows so what was nice about this is that even though ODIS will be IOC-wide, we're starting with the resources that are available from the IODE infrastructure writ large, and that includes a lot of projects that have been successfully created through activities in IODE. Ocean Expert is a good example, but we have a lot more. We have Ocean Docs, we have Ocean Data Standards, so you're absolutely right. All of this information is available, and thanks to the hard work of people like Pauline and her teams that have created those information sources, they are presented in a standards compliant way so that we can harvest them. Ocean Expert, we're harvesting the information from there. We're harvesting the information from the data centers and the ADUs, which is why people need to check their information, because so far this is done by automatic harvesting of information that's freely and openly available. The next level, we will attempt to use the same approach. So we don't want people to have to enter this information again, because as you say, it's already available. Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, but we're talking here about the catalog. Yeah. So when you're talking about people, institutions, in ODIS-CAT, you will find Ocean Expert as a record. Also, another one may be for institutions, the CDataNet, what is it called again?
IDMO, Marine Organization.
Yeah, IDMO, sorry. So the catalog will just make an inventory of sources that describe people or organizations. ORCID may be another one. It is just if people are looking for where can I find information on CC-IONA, for example, well, there are a number of online sources that can give me that information. When you were talking about, do I need to enter my metadata records? No, of course not, because that's not the correct granularity. The catalog will have a record for the C.NET CDIs, for example. For the URL where you can search the CDIs, and also maybe other similar services, online services that provide access to metadata records. So we have to be very careful to make the distinction between an inventory of services that are available online that describe each of these 16 knowledge types and those sources themselves. So you will not find data in IODE-XXV. You will find URLs of online services where you can discover and download data, for example. That's something we really need to make distinction, because otherwise people will not understand and will think it's a duplication of something that already exists.
But let me clarify. I think, Sissy, your question was, will you be required to enter your information again? And the answer is no. We will be using those existing systems. And as Peter points out, right now, it's a higher level granularity pointing to the sources of information. Ultimately, when we get to that level of granularity where we're looking at actual data, then you do not have to enter it again. We will be harvesting from systems that already exist.
I've added here a paragraph 268 because we did get an answer from Tobias through chat. The committee noted the importance of the ability of IODE-XXV to continue to evolve and with supporting activities and components to develop. The IODE-XXV concept, the metadata scheme and semantics should all develop and have a place in the work plan. Because Hernan, you mentioned the metadata. For example, are the data freely available? What machine interaction technologies are available? Those fields are already in the system. Because you remember the intersection working group had a lot of discussions with assistance from ETDMP on what fields should be included. And most of them were included. The only ones that were not included were like geographic bounding boxes, because that was going to be a headache to enter for people. But most of them have been important. Now, what we have not done, we have not used, for example, controlled vocabularies to describe the content, because if people have to search amongst hundreds of controlled keywords, it's going to take too long. Entering a record in IODE-XXV now takes 5 minutes. But if people enter an abstract of 10 or 20 lines, and some of the keywords they think are really important to describe that site, then with artificial intelligence, like we use in the Ocean Best Practices system, we should be able to use ontologies to have a more structured description of those records.
Ireland, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to reiterate the comments around the consultation process, I think it's really important to get the requirements defined up front. I think it will be a very, very useful tool if it hits the requirements of the end users. And to that end, I'm wondering, has there been consultation with regional bodies that are already involved in this area? And I'm thinking in particular the regional bodies like potentially OSPAR, but also groups like ICES or the AORA project in the Atlantic.
Yeah, as I said, when we started with what we had and what we were familiar with the IODE network itself. Eventually, this needs to be an IOC-wide program, but we made the decision within the intersessional working group to start with IODE and the knowledge that we had in the room on the people that had volunteered for that committee. But it's a big undertaking to go to the next step. So that will be up to the next intersessional working group to do that. And there's a series of steps. So this will have to go from this committee, from IODE-XXV, then next to the IOC Assembly 30 to get approval. And then we know that we have the mandate to go forward from there. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, we have informally, we've already had, because for instance, Roger Proctor from IMOS was on the intersessional working group. So the IODE-CAT, the pilot service that's been stood up so far, the prototype, was informed by his contributions. So in fact, and then also Patrick Gorringe, we had a lot of, because he has such knowledge of the eModNet network, and I'm probably forgetting other people in that room. The people that were on the intersessional working group committee had been active in lots of other programs outside of IODE. So in fact, it is informed by other organizations, yeah. But as far as the needs assessment across the other IOC programs, that has not formally been done yet. And yes, I agree, it was a risk to go this far without the formal needs assessment, but we didn't have the people in the room to do that, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Yes, thank you, Ireland.
Can I? So if you can look on the screen, 267, 268, and 269. I hope I have covered what was just said in terms of consultation with end users through relevant organizations in order to define clear objectives as the needs assessment. And so we're instructing the project that is being established through the recommendation to bear that in mind. Is that satisfactory? I'm looking at Ireland.
Pauline, please.
Picking up on your comment about confusion of these different elements, these different phases, you have a URL of odis.org, which implies it is the overall, I'll call it a product, but should it not be IODE-CAT for this IODIS catalogue of sources? How are you locating these different phases or these different elements separately if you're using odis.org?
Well, that's an easy one. If the committee says to avoid confusion, we call it ODIS, well, we register the domain name ODIS-CAT, then that's an easy one. And then ODIS would then, of course, be another page that describes what that has the concept paper and other developments as ODIS develops. So does the committee prefer that we use a different URL for the catalog?
I don't know, where is it called odis.org?
Read the screen too.
Italy?
Yes, in my understanding, it's an evolving system, so I have the perception that the URL should be the same. As the system evolves, you will have it changed.
Yeah, but
Tanya?
It could just be a subdomain, catalog.odis.org.
Sounds good to me. Is everybody happy with that?
Arno, did you have a comment? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes, Belgium?
Peter, a domain name doesn't begin with HTTP. That's a protocol. So just the name, not the protocol before.
Yeah. Okay. Then we go to draft recommendation.
So next we have the draft recommendation 5.2.1 associated with this agenda item, establishment of the IOC Ocean Data and Information System Catalog of Sources project. So this would formally establish IODE-XXV as a project. Comments? There's a terms of reference associated with that. Right, there's a terms of reference for the project itself, and then there's also a terms of reference for the steering group that would be providing guidance for that project. Look and see, do we mention a URL anywhere in those? I don't think we do, so that's okay. Comments from the committee? Italy, thank you.
I would suggest to involve ETD-MP in the membership as a formal part.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Belgium?
Roman 3, IOD co-chairs, which one? Okay.
Italy? No, thank you. Belgium, yes.
Sorry, so no direct representative volunteers from the member states?
Yes. Yep, let's put, I know, but let's specifically call out member states. Thank you.
Going back to the comment from Ireland, should we then also have representatives from other interested organizations?
From IOC programs or other interested organizations more broadly? Yeah.
Or, hello? Or would that fall under other members to be invited?
Yes, I do think we need to, Peter, because it'll be contributing. So we're talking about in the terms of reference for the catalog, Agenda 2030, Decade for Ocean Science. So, yep, I think we need to broaden the membership at this point. And because it's a project, it'll be resourced right out of the magic funding sources in the sky. Other comments from the committee, please? Okay, thank you. Tobias hasn't contributed anything else in the chat?
Can I ask, you have mentioned the first two is project manager, editor, and project technical manager?
Yes.
Are these figures are already identified, or is it a result of the group?
My assumption would be that those roles would be identified out of the group membership, the way we did it the last time. Do people agree? That's the way we did it in the past intersessional working group. Once we had the membership identified, I believe technical manager was not a role that was specifically called out, but we realized that that was a different enough task and that was Francisco Hernandez had that role in the previous IWG.
No, it's Arno, basically.
And it's, and Arno was the implementation of the work.
Yeah, so I would put the different people who are members, and then the group will identify a project manager and a technical manager. Having a list like this, it seems that one of the member is the project manager, while the project manager would be identified between the other IODE co-chairs, the representative of IOC programs, and so on. Maybe a person on the other part of the list.
Do you understand?
I don't
know. No.
Did you get my?
No. Sorry, I don't understand what you're trying to get at.
Membership is IODE co-chairs, representative of IOC programs, representative of IODE secretariat, and so on. While between this group of people, the project manager and the project technical manager will be identified. These are figures identified between the group of members.
So the way I read this, and I'm still not sure I'm following what you're getting at. So there are people who are members of this group, and we want to have representation, and so what we need is someone who will serve in the role of IODE co-chair, bringing in that information and having that communication connection. There'll be representatives that will bring in the knowledge from the IOC programs, and we need someone who will be prepared to serve as the project manager, and we need someone who's prepared to serve as the technical manager, meaning that the membership of the group has to include someone that has the technical expertise to serve in that role. That's the way I read this. Does that help? Unfortunately, I'm not following what you're trying to get at, so...
Well, I guess the question is now, if we start the project, who will be number small Roman 1 and small Roman 2? Yeah, that's a bit the question, maybe. Well, for small Roman 2, right now, IODE-XXV has been developed and is being hosted by the IOC Projects Office for IOD. So the project technical manager would then be Arno Lambert, who is working at the project office, because it's IT work. But of course, the IT work will now have to be decided what needs to be done by this entire group. The question is then, who's the project manager? Do we need to identify at this stage a project manager? Is that your question?
I don't think so.
Well, actually, I thought that it will be identified between the group. But if it is identified, it's good to know. I don't know.
I don't think that person can be identified until the group membership is formed. And it would be up to the group membership to identify which person in that group had that role.
Yeah.
Right, so we don't have a name there because we don't know who it is yet. Yes, Kirsten?
I think actually I get what you're talking about. That from number 3 on, so most probably the project manager and the project technical manager will be from the IODE secretariat. No?
I would say that's a hard no. Okay. I mean, they might be, but not necessarily.
Okay.
They'll be members of the group, but we don't know who those people are yet.
Okay.
Right. That one I do know. Okay, so Peter's adding some words so Alessandra, let us know if this addresses the point that you're making.
Would this be acceptable? So basically, we're saying that as far as the project manager is concerned, that person could be sourced from the representatives 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But the project technical manager is basically the person doing the IT work, would be Arno Lambert, while IODE-XXV is being hosted and developed by the IOC Project Office for IOD. But additional expertise may be called for by the steering group. For example, if we do need additional expertise on artificial intelligence or development of special modules or services, then obviously we would need to find that expertise. We may need to find that expertise outside. So is that okay?
And Peter also clarified, because this is a project, not an intersessional working group,
right.
It's a little bit different structure. Yep. And nothing else from Tobias?
Anything from Tobias? No?
No?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Break time?
Yep.
So it's time for a break, and we'll reconvene
11.
At 11 o'clock, please. Thank you. And Yutaka?
Hi, Cindy. I've been able to hear all of the conversation, but I don't think my texts are getting through.
What?
Thank you, Tobias. No, they're not. And I had taken a moment at the end of each conversation to check in with Ward. So we're going to take a break now until 10 o'clock your time. So we'll see if we can figure out where in the ether your texts have gone, and we'll find those.
5 or 6 second delay with the audio as well.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to remind all the participants and delegates that with regard to the agenda item 3.2.2 and 3.2.3, which were postponed maybe today's afternoon or something, with regard to that agenda item, the revised text for the action paper are available in the draft summary report that circulated in this morning by Peter. So please refer to the text, revised text, regarding the 3.2.2 and 3.2.3. Thank you. Start, right?
Yes, yeah, I said that.
Okay, we'll start at 11 o'clock.
So,
It can be half an hour or 1.5 hours. If you want so that when you start building your they can be translated and then of course if you go to the wrong place, maybe correct is not where you want to, and we will try to work out.
I'm good.
We'll start the session shortly, so
we can't really start without. Okay, we won't be able to start with the agenda items until Peter Paciersens is back in the room, but as soon as he comes back in, we'll start up again with something. All right, we finished. Thanks, everybody, for coming back on time. We're still waiting for Peter Paciersens. We can't continue until he's in the room to do the recording. So Champika, I just want to give you the heads up. When we finish with a couple of the next OTIS topics, the next one we'll do is your 5.4.1. Yep, I just didn't want you to be caught by surprise with that. So I'm thinking that we're done with the makeup of the steering group for the project, and we are ready to move on to the next agenda item. Seeing no objections, we're moving on to item 5.2.2, current IOD and other IOC program products and services that should be included in OTIS. So, because OTIS is ultimately, when we get past the prototype phase into what becomes OTIS, it's going to be, as I've said before, a wide variety of resources and IOC-wide. So here's a list of types of information that would ultimately be included in this, and you'll see that it is indeed quite a broad range of things. And that list kept in mind what we understand at the moment the ocean decade to be, although we've received no mandates from anyone yet, and our understanding of the range of IOC programs that will be involved. So this is a first pass at the types of things, just to give us an idea when we were thinking about the catalog and the metadata schema, what sorts of things we'd have to accommodate. The schema, the way it's currently designed, is quite flexible, so it's quite generic, and there are vocabularies and standards that are available for this type of information that we've been able to find, and things that have been proven in communities that support the interoperability that we'll ultimately need to have. So there's no actions for this, right? Okay. So then going on to agenda item 5.2.3, development of additional OTIS components and their integration into OTIS. So this is the part where I think there has been some confusion over the phased approach that we've taken with the OTIS development, to start with the metadata service layer, then eventually it will move into the more expanded version of OTIS, and ultimately get down to a data exchange layer, but we're a long way from that. So, well, I'm not going to read all these things that Tobias has contributed. The action for this involves adopting the draft decision 5.2.3, which is the decision that would establish the intersessional working group to develop the implementation plan and cost-benefit analysis for the IOC OTIS. So keep in mind that this was part of the original remit from the IOC Assembly, is that in addition to designing the system itself as part of that, that IODE was asked to come back with a cost-benefit analysis. And that means, so considering that resourcing is always a challenge with this kind of activity, they thought it would be useful to have different levels of services and the cost-benefit analysis associated with those, so that people could see, for this much of an investment, you could get this type of service. And if you have more resources available, we can do this. So for instance, for free, we were able to put up the pilot project, the OTIS catalog of sources. If we have some resourcing that magically appears somehow, then we can start to move into more service layers added on top of that. And ideally, we can build on the foundation that's already started. So there is a draft decision text that's included in the action paper, plus Annex A is the terms of reference for that intersessional working group. And that would include the membership. And I think this list was taken from the previous intersessional working group, right? That list looks familiar. So I think that's why that list is a little bit more populated than some of the other membership lists are. But that we can add to that list if anyone sees other communities and expertise that should be represented in that working group. And this is a working group, not a project. Remember, the previous one was the project for OTIS-CAT. This is the working group that will continue on the work already done, picking up, and this is what Alessandra was referring to before, picking up on the work that was done during the past intersessional working period. So the proposal on the floor is to form another intersessional working group to continue the work of OTIS development in this next intersessional period. Comments, please?
You made me point out that the deadline is very short because this is for the...
Yeah, right. So Peter is saying it would be good to remind people that the deadline for at least one of the products of this is quite short, because this will need to be, the document will need to be prepared for the IOC Assembly 30 in June, July, this summer, 2019. And the documents for that, I believe, have to be available by April. Is that correct? Okay, April, maybe May, because it's a little late. Usually it's earlier in June. It's June, July this year. So April, maybe into May. So that's not a very long time frame to do this. And part of the problem with the past intersessional working group, we didn't have anyone on the committee that was able to do cost-benefit analysis type of work. We didn't have that expertise on the committee.
Any volunteers?
Calling for volunteers for membership now. Peter is asking, are there volunteers? Italy, thank you. Thank you, Alessandra.
Yes,
I think you would have been on that through ETDMP anyway.
Yes, starting point could be also the previous intersessional working group. I mean, participants from the previous group might be the first candidates for this follow-up.
Well, I'll leave that up to that membership for them to volunteer again. I agree. It would be lovely. Nick, is that yes, thank you. Nick, Russian Federation. Italy again.
Italy or ETDMP?
I volunteer as ETDMP chair.
Do we also have a volunteer from Italy, or you as ETDMP chair? In keeping with Graham's tactic of volunteering people back at the Home Office.
Has Italy?
Yes.
Sorry. As Italy, and I would ask to include the task team on ODIS, or the chair of the task team of ODIS, at least in the group, as member of the group. Yes, the task team of ODIS, it's one of the task team within ETDMP.
Aha.
Yes. We have this task team
devoted to... Thank you. Yep, got it. I think it's safe to say that no one at this head table has had enough sleep this week, so I won't speak for everyone, but I'm particularly slow today. Belgium, thank you. USA, thank you, Hernan. And that's good. Hernan was on the previous intersessional working group, so it'll be good to have that continuity.
Tobias just volunteered.
Thank you, Tobias. You get gold stars. It would be really nice to have somebody from Goose. Maybe we could get, Pauline, maybe we could convince someone from the Ocean Best Practices system. Say that again? Yeah, I'm not going to go so far as to volunteer people. But
Really?
I stop now.
Okay, that's enough.
Yeah, and maybe on. And so are you agreeable with that, Patrick? You've just been volunteered. Thank you very much. Yes, and Patrick was also on the previous intersessional working group, so it'll be really important to have continuity. Yeah, too bad we lost Roger Proctor, who was our really valuable member from Australia. No, I'm gonna have to up my game here. Clearly, no, didn't work. Belgium.
I saw you added my name. Could you also add Jess?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. The United Kingdom has started a trend now of volunteering other people. I love this. Yeah, excellent. We're getting twice as many volunteers. Thank you.
I volunteer as well.
Thank you. Poland, thank you. Thank you very much. So if this committee works the way the last one did, we communicated by email or at convenient other meetings when a lot of us happened to be present, and then brought in other members on Skype with one face-to-face meeting. And the face-to-face meeting was timed to overlap with ETDMP, and that was really, really valuable. So I would suggest that maybe we try and do that again, because we had twice as many people in the room, and the discussion was really useful. Okay, moving on to, do you remember what I said, 541? Yes, all right. Moving on to item 541, the JCOM data management strategy. And Champika Galash from World Meteorological Organization has volunteered to introduce this item for us. Thank you, Champika.
Yeah, this topic is on the joint WMO-IOC strategy for marine meteorological and oceanographic data management for the period of 2018 to 2021. At JCOM session, the fourth JCOM session held in 2012 in Yuzu, Republic of Korea, the committee requested the data management coordination group to keep the JCOM data management plan and its implementation details under review, and also to update them as needed. As a result, DMCG developed the draft joint WMO-IOC strategy for marine meteorological and oceanographic data management for the period of 2018 to 2021. This strategy provides a vision and a mechanism enabling JCOM to deliver its mission aligned with the JCOM vision and WMO and IOC strategic plans. The strategy defines the mission with 6 outcomes and 17 deliverables, with the guidance on activities that can be conducted within JCOM, but also in collaboration with other relevant WMO and IOC constituent bodies, particularly IODE. The strategy was developed taking some factors into consideration. The holistic and strategic approach to marine meteorological and oceanographic data management in WMO, IOC framework, and in particular IODE. It also taken into consideration the current and future WMO strategic plan, the IOC medium-term strategy for 2014 to 2021, and also particularly the WMO information system 2, WIS2 strategy, as well as IOC strategic plan for data information management for 2017 to 2021. It also got taken into consideration the technological developments in the areas of data management, information system, and emerging data issues such as big data and cloud technology. This strategy was developed by JCOM Data Management Program Area, and the guidance was given by the JCOM Management Committee, and also in collaboration with the IODE and also Observation Program Area under JCOM. So the JCOM Data Management Program Area, through its Data Management Coordination Group, invites this group to welcome the vision, mission, outcomes, and activities outlined in the draft strategy, and also assist JCOM to develop the implementation plan. They also request to collaborate in the implementation of this strategy, promote the strategy and its implementation within IODE projects, and also assist Data Management Program Area to review and update the strategy and implementation as necessary in the future, and finally submit this strategy document to the IOC Assembly for their approval.
Are you finished?
Yes,
yes.
I'm
Yes.
done.
Thank you, Champika, very much. So we have a couple of actions to consider. Comments from the floor, please. So as Peter is transitioning the actions into agreements in the action report, if I could just ask you to follow along at home. Just give me a sign when you're done. USA? Thank you.
Just a minor. Before Peter. Yes, I am. In numeral I, assist JCOM to develop the implementation plan responding to.
Yes, Argentina, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just for clarification purposes. I'm looking at little Roman 4. So in which capacity IODE will be submitting the JCOM strategy to the Assembly for its approval?
So I was wondering about that too. Is that our job to do that, or, I mean, it's coming out of the DMCG? Is it? So.
Well, okay, JCOM is joint IOC WMO, and Shampika, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that if it is a JCOM strategy, then it needs to be approved by both WMO and IOC. Now, I understand that it was already approved by WMO or not yet?
Yes, your point is correct, since it is intergovernmental, JCOM is an intergovernmental body, so it needs to go through WMO Executive Council, which has been done already, and in parallel, that should go to IOC Executive Council.
I understand that because the strategy relates to data and information management, let's say, JCOM has been so kind to seek the advice of IOD as part of IOC. But maybe you have better wording.
Yes, I fully understand the point, and I also know about the nature of this Joint Technical Commission. I'm just wondering if what we are saying here is the IOD committee decided to submit. The IOD is submitting to the Assembly the JCOM strategy for approval. So it seems like, that's my point, my clarification. In which capacity are we doing it? So are we endorsing the strategy as IOD, so the Assembly knows that the IOC data management community agrees with it? I can feel slightly uncomfortable about representing the JCOM strategy, while at the same time in another agenda item we're talking about our own strategy.
Yes, it is, yes. I find the joint committees complicated and confusing, but they're essential. They're really important. But I think I have the same confusion you do. But what I've just decided is, because this is joint IOC WMO, JCOM, and the activity was taken through the Data Management Coordination Group, IODE is presenting the resultant document to IOC, because that's our side of it. Presumably, there's an analogous track for the document to be presented on the WMO side. Now, your other point about does that imply that IODE endorses this document is an interesting one. And I would say yes, but maybe not necessarily. Peter's saying yes.
No, I did say. I mean, I've slightly reworded it. Yes. Was that reflect it better?
Thank you very much to the Secretariat, because as a fact, JCOM will have its own agenda item within the Assembly. So that's where they can present the strategy. What we are saying here is the IODE is endorsing that strategy. Otherwise, we would be presenting that document separate from the JCOM agenda item.
I agree. That makes more sense. Do you agree with that? That the document would actually be presented by JCOM to the IOC Assembly. That makes more sense to me. What we're doing is endorsing. We're saying, yeah, we like this. We were involved in producing this. We endorse it. But it is not our place to present it to the Assembly. That makes sense to me, that JCOM would present it.
So do we need to modify this sentence more still to reflect that? That it is JCOM submitting or what?
Well, I'm looking at my colleagues at WMO, but I'm sure that JCOM will present this. We are ensuring here as IODE that we are endorsing that strategy, not taking it over.
Yep, and I would say it's not our place to present it.
Do we then need the rest of the sentence? Or should I then simply cut the rest of that sentence and simply say endorse?
And encourage JCOM to recommend it to the Assembly?
Yeah.
Submitted.
I think, if I can say, I think I agree with Ariel. The right way to say is that JCOM presents and you endorse as an IOD, because some IOD within JCOM is responsible for working with WMO for data management. So we need to have the endorsement of IOD, but it's correct that JCOM will present, I guess.
Yes, thank you. So you see the words that Peter has revised for item 4 now. Thank you, Ariel, for bringing that up. Yep. Yeah. So good? Yeah. No, just with item 4, not holistically. Canada, thank you.
Sorry, I don't quite understand. So it's a draft right now, and we are, possibly, welcoming the statements that are inside that draft. It doesn't. When will the draft become an actual document?
So JCOM or Chapika, do you know what's the schedule for it becoming a final version?
Sorry. Yeah, as I've mentioned, this was presented on WMO side to Executive Council. So on WMO side, we have done the procedural stuff already. So in parallel, we brought it here for the endorsement, and then it should go to the IOC Assembly. Once it's approved by IOC Assembly, that will become the final version, not draft anymore. The draft become the final version once IOC Assembly approves it.
So it doesn't need to go to the WMO Council again?
No, because the Executive Council has already approved that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
That would only have been if this committee had some issues with something. Thank you, Canada. It is very confusing. But as I said, it's really essential to have the coordination between these two groups. Other comments from the committee? Seeing none. So we're moving on to item 5.5, performance review of the IOC project office for IODE. So that agreement is expiring at the end of 2021. And I will now gratefully turn the microphone over to Yutaka Mishida. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. So I'd like to invite all the delegates to refer to the document IOC IODE-XXV/5.5, which is a proposed modality for the performance review of the IOC project office for IODE in Austria and Belgium. Cindy mentioned, the current MOU between the Flanders Marine Institute and Willis will expire at the end of the 2021. In this case, in order to renew the MOU, a performance review will be required, referring to the article And I can take the one paragraph from that, the modalities document. A review of the performance of the UNESCO IOC project office for IODE shall be organized once and prior to the expiry of this memorandum of understanding. So the evaluation shall be submitted for approval to the IOD committee that oversee the project office activities. So the IOD committee, this committee may, as it necessary, recommend the renewal or extension of this agreement. And in this case, we'll submit this recommendation to the next session of the IOC assembly. I mean, after before the experiment, that means year 2021. So the maybe if we if the next session on IODE will expect to recommend the renewal or extension of the MOU with between the IOC and the release. The review report should be completed by November 2020, so that the IOD management group examine it for the submission for the consideration at the next IOD session, which will be early 2021. Then after that process is that will be recommended to the IOC assembly in next year in that June, July 2021. This is the timeline for that processes. So I'd like to ask your comments committee on these processes and also the documents prepared. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, I'm sorry for that. Are there any questions or comment on the processes and the modalities itself?
Just to add that the modalities included in document 5.5 are pretty much based on those that were used for the partnership center for ODP.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, Argentina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And given the fact that this modalities are similar to the ones used in the Openness Center, and they have proved to work well, I would like to support the idea of using them as a template for this IOD review, IOD office review.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to comment, I understand that so far no budget has been put into the 2019 to 2021 budget. The sessional working group worked on that, and so we still need to put some money aside for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the information. You mean it should be discussed during the discussion of the work plan and budget, right? Thank you. But in the processes, we need to select or ask not less than 2 experts for these review processes. So the proposed text for the committee's the agreement or consensus in this case, please take a look, and it is okay for the committee. If there are no further comments on that. Thank you very much. Next one is 5.6, right?
Yeah, let's do 5.6. Let me just ask, so we're jumping around in the agenda. Alessandra, could I ask you, so we still have to do 3.2.2, 3.2.3. Is there a reason why you would like to do those before lunch or after lunch? Would you want to, we have a little less than an hour now. We could do agenda item 5.6, sort of keep going with where we are in the agenda now. Or is there a reason why you would like to, yeah, you're okay with putting it off till after lunch probably? Okay, all right, good, thank you. Yeah.
So we are moving to the 5.6, which is a revision of the IOC Ocean Data Exchange Policy, which was already discussed at the last session at the IODE-XXV. So I would like to recall the discussion at the last meeting, which is said that the IOC should revise the data exchange policy because of some kind of external condition changes, including the world data system has been introduced by the IOC side instead of the WDC, which has been referred to the current version of the IOC Ocean Data Exchange Policy. And the text has already been suggested at the last meeting for the clause 5 of the IOC Ocean Data Exchange Policy, like this. I can read it. The member states shall, IOC member states shall, to the best practical degree, use data centers linked to the world data system of IODs, NODCs, its World Ocean Database, and the Ocean Biogeographic Information System, ORBIS, as long-term repository for oceanographic data and associated metadata, and ORBIS in particular for biological and ecosystem data. My understanding is the background of this statement is the ORBIS has been getting more and more important in the discussion, including the BBNJ processes. So in this case, for the ORBIS can be referred to this as the long-term data repositories. So this is this was the discussion at the last IOD session. So here we need to discuss. We need to consider the text proposed is applicable, acceptable to the committee or not. Then after the discussion, the final version of the modification will be recommended to the next IOC assembly. So with this, I'd like to have your comments on this matter. Yes, Japan first. Japan, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand and necessary to modify this exchange policy reflecting the present situation and the future vision. Probably we need to think about including information management or like ADU or AIU, and also probably we need if we mention in a specific data, probably in the future we might limit it to the if we mention a specific word, it might be limited to the future category of data. So I prefer to use a more general word in this article. Yeah, I understanding, especially OBIS are very important, but OBIS is sub IOD, one of the IOD activities, so that probably we can use some more general word.
Yes, thank you very much. I take a note. Yes, please, Tyler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do agree with Japan propose, because I can see that their treating is different from here. First, we change the names of the WDC to WOC. It's reasonable because the name of the WDC is changed. And the second part is, as Japan mentioned, I do agree that because it's the biogeographic information system, OBIS. Is it a part in IODE already? As I remember yesterday when we present about all the program of IODE, they have a lot of numbers over that. If we mean specific here, it may be, in the future we have to add more those kind of names in the data privacy. I think we should keep simple. We should that IODE is already include OBIS. And the second, I think, is the missing from the chain when you take out the network. Network. If you said, if you're thinking about IODE network, it makes also cover a lot of those kind of information. It's more general to cover all those data sharing issue.
Thank you, Thailand. I understand the comment from Japan and Thailand, but I would like to recall that we already discussed this at the last IOD meeting, and you can refer to I'm not sure you can refer to that right now, but it said that the committee requested that IOC should revise. This is the text from the report of the last IOD meeting, which is IODE-XXV. In this text, also already mentioned the member states shall exactly the same text here. I think my understanding is already in some sense approved at the last IOD session. Okay, yes, please. Go ahead.
I don't want to reopen discussion because I wasn't at the last IED session and I missed this whole discussion, so I apologize for that. But looking at the statement now, and I think echoing what Thailand is saying about having something about the IED network, by expanding it out and being specific about the bits you're including, it makes it a very exclusive statement. So I don't see the ADUs in that statement now. I don't see ISIS as an ADU or as an observer to the IOC or, in the UN organization. It suddenly becomes what I notice is what's excluded.
Okay, thank you. Yes, or the obvious, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I just want to remember, as Mr. Co-Chair mentioned, that this was a text that we agreed on the last meeting we had 2 years ago. And then also remind the President that every node in the OBIS network is an ADU already. But I think more than that, I think that in the coming compromise we have with the ocean decade and the importance of a biodiversity system is amazingly big, because if you think about the physical environment and biogeochemical environment, they are more or less well organized worldwide, but the biodiversity system is a few years behind that. And I think that if we are very strong in the IOC assembly and we recognize the importance of having a system for biodiversity information, that will make the point that IOD is much more than temperature records, currents, salinity, etc. So it will rise up the question that IOD is also considering the biodiversity as an important source of ocean data sets. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergey, please. Sergey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a proposal for very minor change within the draft decision text, where the sentence is starting noting the ICSU World Data System, and ICSU, it's a former name. The present name is ICS.
Yes, thank you. Yes, please, yes.
No, it's not. It's ISC, but we wouldn't call us.
Use microphone, please.
ISC, but we don't call ourselves that. So you can just keep it as World Data System. If you really want to expand it out, it would be the World Data System of the International Science Council. I would just get rid of ICSU, ISC completely and just keep it as World Data System.
Yes, I got it. Okay, but with regard to the discussion about specifically mentioned about Orbis or the WOA in the policy or not, that is the point. So my suggestion.
So thank you for your patience. So the deliberation up here. So the issue is that the text in this, in the decision, and specifically Clause 5 from the IOC Oceanographic Data and Exchange Policy, came after a considerable amount of wordsmithing. And I honestly don't, I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I don't remember whether ADUs were in there at some point. I do remember that we had discussion about the merits of adding OBIS, and it related to the point that Eduardo was making. The issue now is that if we change significantly the content of this clause, it would be through discussions at this committee meeting, which does not include the same people that were at IODE-XXV. So therefore, we'd have to send that out to the full committee to give people a chance to give us feedback. I doubt we could do that and get it rewritten in time to get it into the 30th Assembly. So that's the difficulty, because this involves all the people in this room, but also more people that weren't able to physically travel to this meeting. I don't think it's appropriate for us to change this wording that was generated from IODE-XXV. Is that, did I describe that correctly? Okay. So I'll give you a chance to think about it, and then we can think about what we want to do about this. The other point to make is that associate data units are not necessarily permanent data repositories. So the National Oceanographic Data Centers are, World Data System. Many of the OBIS nodes are, but they're not required to be because the data are submitted to OBIS. So I know in my case for BICO-DEMO, we're a research project. We have a lot of data, and they're all replicated at the National Oceanographic Data Center, NCEI, in the US, but we are not a 100-year ISO compliant data center, permanent repository. So I want to say that's why we didn't put the ADUs in here, but I really don't remember. I'd have to look at my notes.
Can I? Yeah, I mean, if the wording there is long-term repository for oceanographic data, I would consider ISIS that we have data over 100 years. We are long-term, we're more or less permanent. So it might not be the usual case for an ADU, but certainly in our position, we'd feel that.
Right. Are you a WDS node? Well, I think what I would suggest is that could you afford to apply for WDS certification? The DSA WDS core trust seal?
Well, actually, I was talking to the ISIS governing board last night about various accreditation programs, and the question is which horse to back. So if we go down the IODE accreditation route, I mean, that wouldn't make sense to do both, I don't think. So that would preclude us doing IOD accreditation if we went down that route.
Right. So as I said, this wording came after lengthy discussions at IODE-XXV. And the intent of this is to encourage people, so to the best practical degree, right? So considering that we're dealing with everyone on the planet that is whose job it is to provide stewardship for oceanographic data, the primary recommendation is to go for your national oceanographic data center. If you don't have one of those, because not everybody does, maybe there's an OBIS node. And if not, we have World Data System nodes as well. And those are all connected to each other. IODE is part of the World Data System. So that was the intent of that sentence. I mean, if you look at what the wording is from before, it's quite vague. And we thought it was time to update this with some specifics and call out the fact that there are permanent repositories whose job it is to make sure that those data are cared for, and 100-year compliant archives. I understand what you're saying, and ICES may be, and probably isn't a unique case. I suspect there are others. I'm just not capable of thinking intelligently at the moment. Italy, yeah.
Yes, I think that this session has to approve this draft decision, should be shared and agreed by all of us as well. I mean, I know that it comes from the previous session, but it should be a common degree of agreement, even within this session.
Yes, but the point that's been brought up by ICES, and I suspect there are others that are now thinking this way as well, is valid. It's just the point of whether. So I think the choice is we can either approve this as it is from this session, or not and start over again. But I think there's an intermediate one, which is that we take an action item to bring this up again at the next session, specifically referring to the concern that there are, and I'd like to think about whether there are other examples, because I suspect that there are, persistent archives that have a long track record history of providing proper stewardship for oceanographic data, and they should be mentioned as well. I mean, you want to keep it short, so we can't name all of them, but we should try and figure out whether there's a category. That's why I was trying to get around it by saying, could you come in under the World Data System and then you're covered?
I mean, to go back to Thailand's point, I mean, the expression there of considering this an IOD network is much more inclusive. Because I'm going to probably annoy a few people when I say this. The problem, I mean, I thought IOD was going in the direction of breaking down some of the hierarchy and barriers that have traditionally been around IOD. And what I see there is a hierarchy. It really spells out quite clearly, you know, if you're first tier, second tier, third tier. And, you know, that's where I probably have the biggest problem as an ICES.
Right, I understand. The definition of an ADU.
Yeah, I think we need to go a little bit back to what's an ADU. Because as an ADU can be projects, programs, institutions, or organizations. Now, inherently, projects are not persistent. They are time-bound. And the problem used to be in the past, same for programs, that because they were time-limited, often the data they had managed over a period of time would simply disappear. So that was a reason that IOD established, one of the reasons that the ADU concept was established, and it also said that those ADUs that are established need to be closely linked to the NODCs. So if these activities end, then the data go to the NODC. So that's why it would be a bit difficult now to say that we are considering ADUs as possible persistent repositories, because that doesn't comply with the definition of the ADU. Yeah, so now there may be exceptions, yeah, and you fall under organizations, and you may have a policy of persistent repository, and then we need to look at that, because we cannot, I don't think, single out one ADU, because then others might object. So I think in the case of ISIS, we need to think about that and see if there's another way, and discuss that during the next intersessional. But the point is, of course, here IODE-XXV made a statement and requested that the IOC should revise its policy. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible to submit that the recommendation or draft decision to the Assembly in 2017, and that's why we're doing it now. But if we now backtrack and start opening the discussion again, we may again not be able to submit something. But does my recalling what the ADUs are, does that make it a bit more clear?
It does, but I'd just like to point out, I mean, I'm not really speaking as an ADU. ISIS has been an observer and has an MOU with the IOC, which predates being an ADU. So I'm talking about, you know, this goes back in history a lot further than establishing as an ADU. I would just like to make the point and have it noted somewhere that I think whatever you decide here and whatever you go forward based on meeting 24, and you have to take that decision as you do, that I think this needs to be opened up at some point and discussed intersessionally to come to something that is really more inclusive.
Yeah, so Neil, I understand what you're saying. It is a really valid point. Going back to IODE-XXV, maybe the one in Ensenada, where the ADUs were formed and we wrestled with that idea. And you're absolutely right. One of the main reasons for doing that was to broaden the network and specifically push back against that perception that IODE is just the tall ivory tower, big national data centers. So in defining what an ADU is, I think we did succeed at that. We did expand the network. And your point is well taken that ISIS has been around before all of this. And so in my case, so for BICODEMO, we are an associate data unit. That meant we could contribute to IOD and we felt more like we were connected with the network. But it's a big distinction between BICODEMO, which is an NSF-funded research project, and yes, it's persisted for longer than we ever anticipated, and we keep the data spinning on disks and there's dynamic changes, but because we have a very tight association with our National Oceanographic Data Center in the US, part of NCEI, that is where the data are permanently archived. And without that, well, we provide a different service to the community without that connection. Now, ICES is a different situation, and I agree with Peter, we don't want to be going in and singling out particular ones. But I still agree with the way this is worded, is that in encouraging member states to deposit their data in recognized permanent repositories, archive quality data centers, that, in my opinion, that is the message that we want to send. I hear you, though, about the perception that that pushes us back to the point where this was an exclusive club and not a broad network. So I appreciate that comment, and I think we need to think about that very seriously and probably put this on for discussion at the next session. Considering all of this, I'll try and take better notes so that I don't have to try and recall how we got here. But your point is very well taken. And so that would be unfortunate if we were inadvertently taking a step back and retracing our steps, where I think we have made a lot of progress in opening up the community. So thank you. And I think this was Alessandra's point, that, yep, so Peter has added some text in here. Yep. To accommodate these, yeah, right, in the policy. So that's the difference. So, and are valuable contributors to IODE. But the policy is different. So that's it's one of the missions of IODE, is to encourage data, ocean data exchange internationally across all of the borders.
WDs. Rory.
Rory, yep, thank you.
So I don't want to open more cans of worms, so I'm going to stay out of the decision here. But there's a couple of points I want to say. I absolutely agree with Cindy when it comes to really making it clear about permanent, long-term, sustainable repositories. This is an important point that really needs to be emphasized, and I think the fact that IODE is doing that is wonderful. And going back to the specific point that was made as regards going through the IODE accreditation, please don't think for 1 minute that the IODE accreditation and being certified under the Core Trust seal are mutually exclusive things. Anything you do for one is completely relevant to the other. So it wouldn't be a huge step to do both in parallel, to just bear that in mind, and it's something I'm happy to talk with you about.
Thank you, Roy. That was actually really helpful. I mean, it might be as simple as adding or IODE accredited repository, but we'd have to look at the definition of that. Is that Netherlands? Thank you.
Concerning the remark that you added in 331 about further changes in the future, revise the policy further in the future. Of course, we should be able to further revise the policy, but now we are suggesting a draft decision or change or whatever to IOC, knowing that for the next IOC meeting we will have another change in the same clause. Is that wise to do?
I see what you're saying. No, I think that's not ideal, but I also don't want to dismiss this point. I agree with what's written there, that this is worthy of being taken up and considered in the management group. So what we're trying to do is, so if we could get the wording agreed upon and get it to the IOC assembly, that would be nice. We don't ignore this point that's been made, but it needs further discussion. And so I see it as a compromise.
But can't the committee allow the management team to make those changes, knowing what the subject is about, and then have a new text submitted to the IOC assembly before June?
Before IOC 30, the one coming up in 2019? No, I think that's beyond the purview of the management group. Yeah, the management group couldn't make a decision like that without the full contributions of the IODE committee, in my opinion. Yep, Peter?
Well, yes, indeed. It's not up to the management group to make this kind of policy decisions. But also, okay, it's not ideal that we keep changing, but we also have to bear in mind that the decade will be coming in 2021, and also that may require modifications to the data policy. So I think we're now a little bit in a transition. I mean, it's basically our mistake that we didn't submit this already to the IOC Assembly in 2017. Yeah, and that it's sort of a legacy of that. I do understand the comment by ICES, and that's why I think this paragraph 331 may help, because there may be other cases like ICES. Yeah, and so we need to think about that. And then together with the decade, maybe the policy will be looking totally different.
Okay, thank you very much for the discussion, and the consensus on that. Or I like just one thing to remind you that the clause 5 has current version. The clause 5 has a subtitle, which is the use of IODE system. So the IOC data exchange policy, the clause 5 talking about IOC use as far as possible the IODE system in their data exchange policy. Now, I'd like just to recall that it is the full text for the IOC data exchange policy right now. Okay, with that, there are any further suggestion or comment? And also the 330 and 331 inserted here, based on our discussion on this agenda item. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So what is the next one?
Well, let me just explain what we're doing. All right, so continue our theme of jumping around the agenda in random order. We'll continue with item 6, introduction to the work plan and budget, financial resources 2019 to 2021. So item 6.1, UNESCO regular program, financial resources. Yes? Yeah. So Peter Paciersens will lead us through this.
Well, actually, I am Taco de Bruin. Because Taco yesterday introduced this agenda item as a preview of the work plan and budget. He presented the spreadsheet with the work of the sessional working group. But under the agenda of the meeting, we have 6.1, where we inform the committee of what will be available for 2019. We know that we will have $117,000 for 2020 and 2021. It depends a bit on the decision of the General Conference positions of UNESCO on what kind of cuts they will make, because with the departure of the United States from UNESCO, that is of course a serious chunk that disappears from the budget, and UNESCO will have to accommodate that change. So we don't yet know exactly what we will get, but the estimate is that we'll go from 117 to 102,540. Now, that being said, we sometimes also get some additional revenue from non-earmarked contributions to the IOC Trust Fund, as it is called, and so that may compensate for these losses. So that just to recall a little bit what Taco yesterday presented in terms of the budget scenarios, and basically the realistic one was the 15% cut of the requested budget. Can we then go to 6.2?
Yes, please.
So in terms of human resources, in the document you will find the list of staff that are now working at the project office in Oostende. We have 2 permanent positions, UNESCO positions, that is Wart and myself. We have then, 3.5 positions that are seconded by the government of Flanders through the Flanders Marine Institute. And then we also have project appointments, which in the past were often funded through these FUST projects, but also sometimes through other extra budgetary projects. So they're inherently somewhat unstable. We also received an internship between 2017 and 2019. Mr. Truong from Vietnam, who you saw during the scientific conference, he was provided by Japan because he's a student at the University of Tokyo. And he helped with Ocean Teacher, Global Academy, and some other CD activities. Also, we have Miss, how do I pronounce her name? Raisita Pratiwi, who works for OBIS for 6 months. She will be with us until March 2019 to assist with OBIS. So, of course, we would really like to invite member states to take this example and also try to second staff to the project office for shorter or longer periods, because that really helps. It seems to be quite reasonably easy to get secondees for Paris. And I'm looking at Kirsten, my colleague. Ostende somehow doesn't seem to be so appealing. So maybe we have to send out nicer pictures of sunny Ostende. Then let's go on to 6.3, extra budgetary financial resources. You can see that all the projects funded by Flanders are terminating around June or December 2019. We already explained that first is the decision to renew FUST has been made, but we will only be able to submit new proposals by the end of 2019. So we will be having a bit of a gap. Again, we always try to participate in projects. Sometimes we get invited to participate in European Commission funded projects, but it's not always very easy because of administrative issues between the Commission and UNESCO, but we keep trying. Of course, we also get funding from the government of Flanders, not only for staff, but also for operations, and that's about 160,000 euros per year. Part of it is operations, part of it is equipment, and such like. Yeah, I think that's about what I wanted to say. We already explained that one of our IT people in Ostende is co-paid by the other IOC programs, because the IOC, the IOD project office is supporting the IOC IT services, and that will continue. So I think that's all I wanted to say. There's just 2 proposed actions by the committee. One expressing its appreciation to the government of Flanders, Kingdom of Belgium, and one expressing appreciation to the government of Japan for the intern. Okay.
Any other comments? Yes, Netherlands? Yeah.
addition/change in the draft work plan and budget that was presented yesterday. Last night, Greg Reed has been contacted by the chair of IODE-XXV, who explained what was planned for IODE-XXV, and that required some changes in the overall budget. And those changes required unfortunately, additional reduction of the budget per project. Instead of 15%, it's now required to reduce it by 20% in 2019, and instead of 35%, it's a 40% reduction in 2020. But then the good news is that the deficit has almost disappeared.
Okay, but that will then be further discussed under agenda item 7. Yeah. For there's still 6.4. Well, Cindy is going to present that.
Yeah, item 6.4, other resource opportunities for 2019-2021. So this is the point where, and don't all rush up to the front at once now, any committee members who wish to report on or propose other resource opportunities for the next intersessional period. So that could be funding, or as Peter has said, secondments or in-kind support. We're open to all contributions. As you can see, the budget is has some serious issues, and that shift from 20 to 15%, at some point, some projects may not be able to continue because they're already operating on very severe budget restrictions. So no one is aware of any other or has suggestions for other sources of funding support that we might consider going after? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Francisco. Yep.
It's a comment. I guess it's a little bit difficult to actually, for some of us to really say we're going to allocate this or that. I believe that in many cases, in-kind support coming from the countries, it's a case-by-case situation. So it'd be difficult today to actually say how much or what will be the resources that we can put into the activities. So I guess that's something that we have to actually work in each of the activities that we're putting in the plan. But in my experience, in the case of the projects that Colombia has been carrying out, like CMA2 or TGA or SPINCA, but different activities, in each time, in each of the issues, there has been resources that have been supporting the activities. So that's mainly in kind, not only in kind, but it's actually the situation. So I would find difficult today to say how much or what kind of money or kind of resources we'll be allocating. But there will be, for sure, and that's, I believe, the same situation in many of the countries undergoing activities within the work plan. Thank you.
Yes, I understand, Francisco. And the regional training centers are a very good example where you're committing to providing local resources and support. And it's extremely difficult to put a financial number on that. But that's exactly the sort of example I was thinking of, where just saying out loud the way that you figured out how to bring in additional resources, so not coming from the IODE budget, but you're almost like a matching funds kind of thing. And so just examples of how people have figured out how to do that.
And then if we organize meetings, of course, those participants need to be supported. So we still need those funds to enable that. So, but as I said, it would be a good exercise to see how much is each country investing in data management. So, okay.
So we're close enough to 12:30 that we're going to declare lunch break. Yes, but we're not going to announce that. So we're going to take a lunch break. Please try and be back here by 2:30. Also during this lunch break, my notes say there's the IODE-XXV group meeting. Yes, would you like to let people know which room you're in? Do you know which room you're in?
Okay, for working group meeting of IODE-XXV, B2 is available for your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Norio.
Also, lunchbox are ready to get, so please
Thank you.
Get it at this desk.
Thank you. So room B2 is one of the rooms that we were meeting in yesterday, just around the corner. Yeah. It's the other ballroom. Okay. And Norio has also said that the lunch boxes, similar to yesterday, are available for people to pick up. Please return those boxes to the reception table when you're done, because they would like us to do that. Nadia, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to know if we can have the meeting on the JCOM information this evening at 6 o'clock. Yeah. Is it?
Yes. Yeah, it's in room B1.
Yes, Nadia, apparently that has been arranged in room B1. So
Thank you.
6 p.m., the JCOM information, that's what you're calling it, JCOM information?
Session. Oh, I don't know how you call it, parallel session.
Okay. So a JCOM, oh yes, I'm sorry, I remember what this is. Right, the JCOM information session for people interested in that topic. Yeah, and so we'll figure out which order, but I was going to propose that we do 3.22, 3.23, the GDAX and MCDS first, 352, and then move into 7, which is the Ocean Best Practices System Project Proposal, and then finish up. No, then we'll probably switch to 37253, and then we'll go with the final items for the agenda. Yep.
Yeah, just 352, that is Godard, because Tim still needed to provide some, you still needed to provide some text for that. Could you try to do that during lunchtime? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so lunch break, have fun, and see us back here at 2:30, please.